I have been looking for something like this for a long time. In fact, I nearly picked up the older version of this unit several times over the past couple years. But if you don't know what this is the U45 wireless in-ear monitor system from Xvive, which is part of their new lineup of 5.8 gigahertz wireless systems. Xvive did send over the U45 so that I could give my honest thoughts on it, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Big thank you to Xvive for sending these over. So the main idea here is that these are portable, affordable, and rechargeable, which is much different than the larger, more expensive units. The way it works in this scenario is that you take the transmitter and plug it into your audio interface, mixer, stage box, amp, or whatever, and it sends the signal wirelessly to the receiver, which is this little guy. But my main concern with a product like this is, what is being sacrificed to make this product smaller and more affordable than the competition? Well, the specs are very similar to the P58 that I reviewed last week, but when it comes to build quality, I've used other affordable wireless gear that didn't feel super solid, but it sounded good and I took good care of it, so it was fine, but I don't really feel the same way about the U45. When I took this thing out of the box, I was genuinely surprised by the heft of it. It feels very solid, but isn't heavy enough to be bothered by it when you're wearing the receiver. I do feel a bit more secure using and traveling with the U45 as opposed to other wireless units that I've tried. On the transmitter, you have a power switch and a switch that toggles between aux and line level signal. And then you have this little round button that can be used to manually switch between the 6 available channels. On the receiver, the power switch is actually right on top of the unit next to the headphone output, which is a convenient place for it when it's attached to your belt and you just want to easily glance down at it. And then you have the volume knob here, which is still easy to reach for and adjust, but it has some resistance to it, so you're not going to accidentally bump your volume up and down during a show or during tracking, which is a great feeling. And this definitely confused me at first, but the channel switcher is not a rotating knob like the volume knob, though it seems like it would be just based on the looks of it. It's actually just this little button here, which functions pretty much exactly like the button on the transmitter, but to change channels on the receiver, you sort of have to unlock it by doing a double press on the button. You can hold it down for 3 seconds and it'll scan for the best channel automatically. After using this quite a bit, I actually think that this is a good thing because you're not gonna reach down to adjust your volume and then accidentally change channels, which would cause you to lose sound altogether. I do think it also simplifies the unit as each control feels completely different from the others. Now, I've used this in the studio and in live environments with other wireless gear, and I haven't experienced any dropouts as of yet. Kind of going back to the discussion from last week's video, there's obviously this sort of elephant in the room that is, why would I use wireless gear in the studio? Especially because most of what I talk about on this channel is specifically recording gear for home studios. To be totally transparent with you, this is obviously great for live stuff, and there are tons of videos about that on YouTube. But if you're someone like me, you do a bit of both live and studio stuff, which I think is where this could really shine. Because they're so small and rechargeable, I can throw them into a gig bag for live stuff and that's great, but I can also just grab them when I'm wanting to do some songwriting or tracking in the studio. I've touched on this a bit before, but as a multi-instrumentalist, I have a Logic session right here, my keyboard over here, my guitar amp over here, and then my drums right behind me. Normally, I have a headphone cable running to the drums that's ready to go, which does work great, but because I benefit from the live usage of the U45, I can also benefit from using it in the studio. I was working on a track just last week and was genuinely surprised at how well the U45 kept me in the moment while building out the track. It seems kind of silly, but instead of unplugging and walking to the next instrument or rolling back and forth tripping over the headphone cable, I could just build upon the groove that I was making and didn't have to worry about anything else. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty cool. Now, I don't really have any cons based on my experience so far, except for this one glaring thing, which is not really much of a con because they make it clear in the marketing, but the U45 is a mono system, which makes sense. The way that the transmitter is designed, being so compact and just the one little XLR plug, you couldn't really do this exact thing as a stereo system without radically changing the form factor and probably sacrificing the portability, ease of use, and affordability. I would venture to say that this is probably a bigger deal for people wanting to use this in the studio, but I also get that there are lots of people who prefer stereo when using in-ear monitors live as well. I will say that in my experience using this in the studio, I just plugged straight into my Apollo X4 and it summed all the stereo stuff to mono, which for me at least was perfectly fine for tracking. Obviously I wouldn't use something like this to do mixes or anything like that anyways, but it was nice to just freely move around the studio for tracking or freely moving around the stage without any noticeable latency or drop in quality, even if it is in mono. But honestly, who exactly is this for? I don't want to try to sell you on the U45 if you're not someone who would genuinely benefit from something like this, but I do know that there are lots of people in this space that not only have home studios, but also play live at parks, coffee shops, or churches on the weekends, much like I do. That's who I think this is for, along with people who only play live music. Obviously, this would be great for that. If you pretty much just work at your desk in a tight home studio and have zero interest in playing live, it might be fun to have. You don't need it though. I do want to hear what your thoughts are on this wireless stuff as it relates to home studios, because I do realize this can be a bit of a weird topic for our community. If you are curious about this wireless stuff, I do have a link to the U45 in the description down below where you can check it out for yourself. And in case you missed it, here's the video where I talked about Xvive's wireless guitar system, and I also just concluded my big audio interface shootout, so pick your poison between these, and as always, thanks for hanging out.